What's up, guys? Clavette here, and I wanted to do a quick track breakdown of Already Heard. My first release as Clavette came out about a month ago on Los Angeles Music Project and Puzzle Records. The response has been really good so far. I've had a lot of support on Beatport. I've had a lot of support on Spotify. And I've just really enjoyed all the nice messages from people. And, it's kind of just really reassuring to hear people are connected with the music. So I wanted to open this up for any people wondering about my process or any geeks, producers kind of interested in picking up some tips. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to quickly go through everything, kind of go through all the elements and talk about a few things that I think I did a little differently than maybe most people. So, typically, let me just make sure we're recording here. We are recording. Great. Um, you know, I like to start with the drums, and they start like this. Pretty basic. Kick, clap, hat, percussion kind of vibe. We start with the kick, and if you can see here, the way I like to start my kicks is kind of with like a chunkier one, a low end that has like a lot of body and boom, and then kind of layer it up from there. So that's why you see a handful of different layers here. But typically what happens is there's kind of a lower layer and then higher layers on top of it. So a couple of these are disabled, not negligible differences going on. I've really just kind of tried to simplify my process, so there's some plugins missing, as you can see here. But this would have just been a top end kind of thing, and that's usually something I'll add maybe at the end, some sort of click so that the kick kind of comes through a little more. Processing is kind of simple, a little bit of saturation in the low end, some EQ, really just filtering it, not even doing that much. And a little bit of limiting, and then some automation to kind of help the kick move and be a little more free. Automation's like such a big part of any kind of piece of music, especially electronic music. And house music, automation is used just all over the place to keep a loop, kind of like a drum loop. Like you could automate all these things, move things, parameters, change how the kick sounds over time, and that's going to like drastically help your listener kind of stay in it with you through the whole 6 minutes or whatnot. So a little bit off topic, but that's kind of how automation works, and you'll see that on all of these tracks that I do a little bit of that. So some automation here to finish up the kick. Then we have the clap. Really just a lot of different sounds kind of triggering at the same time in a similar process. A lot of EQ, compression, limiting, automation. This track, I was really going for something that sounded like really organic and acoustic sounding. So a lot of these sounds kind of have like drum kits or like some sort of like room noise so that the sound has that kind of like live kind of vibe. I like to call these rhythm snares because they kind of, if you hear, they add kind of like a rhythm to it because it's a little swung and it's a little bit syncopated. Then we get to our hats, and there's a lot of them going on. So they all sound together like this. Oh. And there's a handful of different layers going on there. So we have this kind of first one, which is doing kind of like a more chunkier version, kind of more live sounding, like I mentioned. Then we have this kind of like high frequency one that's kind of wider. Your classic 909. This is like just the staple of really a lot of house music sounds. If you can see here, I've got a little makeshift 909, the Roland Boutique. Great, really great stuff. I really love that. So, getting back to this, another kind of high frequency digital sounding one. Another hat on the 16th, just keeping you rolling along. And another 16th hat. But this one is cool because it's coming from this simpler, or rather this drum break. And so one thing I like to do with drums, especially breaks, is throw them into simpler, use this slice function, have all of the transients or all the drum hits get picked up by the algorithm, and then replaying that in a fashion that maybe is different than the original. So you kind of create something unique from something existing already. Now we get down to the percussion. I really love percussion because you can really kind of stand out with this. So for this, there's kind of a bed and then there's kind of a motif going on. So the bed is these two, the shaker and the tambourine, right? Kind of doing a similar thing to those hats that are on the 16th notes, just keeping that rhythm. Once you have that rhythm, then you can kind of have what I like to call the motif. So creating some sort of like pattern. And with this song, because it was very drum, bass, and vocal, there's not a lot much more going on. I wanted to create a little bit of melody going on in the percussion. So the way I did that was by chopping up these different samples, kind of arranging them and kind of just playing around. It's not like I hear it and just go with it. So it's a lot of experimentation, and this is kind of what I came up with. The only other thing looks like, just kind of this like chunky, glitchy kind of thing that I probably like chopped up a bit. So, this all together sounds quite fun. Like I said, like most rhythms in house music are kind of the same, but I think you can kind of really stand out when you add in that kind of motif and really try and do something a little special with the percussion. Now we get to the bass. It's this descending pattern, and you can kind of see it. It's coming from G sharp down to another G sharp, and it's kind of descending in between there. This was a really, really cool melody that I kind of came up with, and I really wouldn't have written it this way. And the way that I wrote it was doing something I hadn't really done before. So here's the acapella. That I've already heard on. So don't just say things that And what I did is this cool function within Ableton. You can do convert melody to new MIDI track. And what that does is it kind of analyzes the audio and then just tries to play it in MIDI, which is kind of this other form of music making where you're triggering sounds versus having audio playback. So the MIDI kind of came back similar to this, not quite this, and I kind of tweaked it, messed around with it until I found something that worked. The great part about doing this kind of a technique is like everything's kind of related. You're using melodies from, the acapella that's already inside of this track. So the bass line and the acapella together should be very in sync because they're kind of doing the same melody over and over again. As far as the sound goes, simple operator doing a little sine wave, a little bit of saturation, EQ, a little bit of side chaining. And then the main part that you're hearing, which is this one, is I think that's just an 808 sound, and there's not much going on there. It's just a good sound. Don't fix what ain't broken. Another thing I love doing is adding these like ambient elements. So there's really no rhyme or reason to this. I think one of these is something I resampled from the vocal, some reverb, some vinyl noise, some crowd noise, kind of a weird modular sound that I just felt kind of added to the cheekiness of it. And sometimes what I'll do if I'm not feeling generally inspired is throwing these kind of elements into the track and trying to listen for any rhythms or grooves or melodies just in these like kind of pieces of audio that typically don't have any type of information besides just kind of tone and ambience. But the human brain is incredible because even from just like adding these things into a song, you start hearing things. You start trying to put together patterns. That's what's so incredible. So I don't think that happened with this track, but these are elements that I'll throw in almost every track. Something really low, you barely even hear it, but it definitely adds like a little bit of a vibe. So then we got to the acapella. Kind of played this for you already, so I'm not going to do it again. But this is an acapella from this amazing R&B group called Brownstone. They were in the mid-90s. If You Love Me was a song. That song has been famously sampled by Tory Lanez in Say It. Kind of the big chants in that song are what he is rapping in between. That's from this sample. So I tried to use this. I'd been listening to it for a long time and was like, I want to try and flip it my own way. And I think I did. I actually had a producer who I quite look up to message me back when I sent him the song, and he said, not to sound cheeky, but I've already heard that vocal a million times, but you seem to do it in a pretty fresh way. So that was really reassuring and really great to hear from him. Huxley, if you're watching, thanks for the great advice. I didn't do too much on this, really just tried to saturate it and make it sound a little bit edgy. As you can hear, it's not the cleanest. It's got quite a bit of distortion on it. If I take these two elements off, it's much cleaner, but I needed something with a little more edge, a little bit of dirt, something to give it, less of an electronic feel. Another kind of little vocal hit thing. And that's kind of most of the song. There's a ton of effects in here that I do in yellow. These are just kind of giving tension, and a lot of this is just audio or stuff that I'll just like kind of experiment with. But I try to kind of focus my time and energy on what's important, the melodic elements and things like that. So the effects typically I'll just throw together really quick. Finally, there's one last thing in here I wanted to show you guys, and it's this kind of moment right before the second drop where the vocal seems to kind of, constantly kind of increase in speed almost. And the way I did that is by taking the acapella and bouncing it down into another piece of audio, and then throwing that into a simpler, kind of just like a sample unit thing, and triggering it in a way that it made it felt like it was constantly speeding up. So right, it kind of constantly keeps speeding up. So the way I did that is in simpler, you can set a loop. So it's just going to constantly cycle through the same thing over and over again. And I just kind of automated the length, right? I was talking about automation a lot earlier. This is what kind of makes this thing become really lively, is that I'm automating the loop. So the shorter the loop length gets, the quicker it's going to keep re-triggering. And so at the end of it, you get this really cool and fun element that just keeps like building tension in a way maybe that effects could possibly do. And that's it. I mean, that's pretty much the whole thing. There's a lot more stuff I could break down in here and probably a longer video. So if you guys like this and want to see more about my process, leave a comment. Show me that this is good content by liking the post, and I'll definitely be making more of these. So if you haven't heard the track, please check it out on my Spotify, on my SoundCloud, support it on Beatport if you can. Anything you can do helps, and let me know what you think of this. So I hope you guys learned something. I hope you guys are having a great day, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Peace.